It's the season finale. Can the UCF Knights go out with a victory versus the Utah Utes?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Today, we're talking the UCF Knights versus the Utah Utes. It's the season finale. UCF suffered a pretty disappointing loss to West Virginia last week, 31-21. Today, we're going to talk about how they stack up with Utah for that final game. Can Gus Malzahn go out with a win? We're going to talk about what the numbers look like. But before we get into that, definitely want to thank our show sponsor, FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, bringing you guys lots of great ways to bet on games. We appreciate them for sponsoring this segment. So, guys, let's get into it here. UCF is in trouble. And this is going to be some kind of offseason for Gus Malzahn if he happens to hold on to the job. But today we want to talk about what to expect from the Utah Utes, who to watch, and what's going on here. So we got a number of updates for you guys today. Again, thank you for joining us. Who to watch from Utah? Well, here's our players to watch. Luke Botari is going to be the starting quarterback for Utah in this one. Botari takes over for Isaac Wilson, who was injured against Iowa State. He got gator rolled there. Kyle Whittingham took some issues with the finishing of that tackle that left his starting quarterback injured. He's out for the rest of the season, it looks like, and for the foreseeable future, it looks like he's out for the spring. So we've got Luke Botari, who will be stepping in. He made some plays when he came into the game last week. I'll be interested to see. Leading rusher Mike Bernard will also be on the field for Utah. Look, this is a running football team. The Utes aren't very good offensively. As a matter of fact, as far as offense is concerned, they're next to last in the league behind Houston and almost every statistical offensive category. They're not very good. So from a running standpoint, they're in the bottom of the league. And then you've got leading receiver Dorian Singer, who also will be target of this UCF defense. So those are your players to watch. As I mentioned, Batari's stepping in for Isaac Wilson. Again, he suffered a knee injury versus Iowa State, and he's going to be out. He's going to be out for this one. So we'll see what Botari can do. He's a little bit better of a runner, I think, maybe than Isaac Wilson, but, we'll see where they land up. Now, how do these teams stack up in the passing game? Let's take a look so far on the season. UCF took a little bit of a step back on Saturday. UCF 199 yards per game to 207 yards per game for Utah. These teams are fairly close. And as far as the passing game is concerned, got a little bit of a typo there, but that's actually 207 yards per game for Utah versus 338. For UCF versus 338 for Utah, 8.1 yards per pass versus 6.8 yards per pass, and a total of 2190. It's going to be interesting to see what these teams can do in the passing games. The end totals look very, very similar. Now, the challenge here, I think, for UCF is going to be, can you get Dylan Risk going again? It's been a little bit of rough sledding for UCF in the passing game. It's been tough for them. They started out with KJ Jefferson. Jefferson got benched, and then you moved on to Ja'Cory Brown. Ja'Cory got benched, and EJ Colson got a tiny bit of a sliver of a chance. And he got benched. And now you're on to your four-string quarterback, Dylan Risk, who has started the last few games. It was a little bit of a rough outing. Overall, I would say not terrible for Dylan Risk, but they need him to step up here in this last game. And if you're Dylan Risk, what's on the line for you? Well, going into this offseason, it's going to be expected, especially if Gus is to remain the head coach, that they may need to go out and find another quarterback. They put a lot into KJ Jefferson for it not to work out. So, what will Gus Malzahn do? Well, if you're Dylan Risk, you're not going to make a bowl game. I think that's fairly certain at this point. What do you have to do? This is your last chance audition if you're Dylan Risk to go out against Utah and show that you have what it takes to be a starting Big 12 quarterback. Now, what's he up against defensively? And we're taking a look here at the defensive numbers. Utah defensively is, by the numbers, they're the third best team in the Big 12 in terms of total yards allowed. The Utes are they're allowing about 199 yards per game through the air. And then on the ground, the Utes are allowing only 125 yards per game on the ground. They're tough defensively. They've been tough all year. And if you're UCF, you've got to find a way to continue to feed RJ Harvey in what will likely be his last college game. Now, we all know who RJ Harvey is, and we're going to talk about the rushing numbers here in just a second, but he is the key to the game here. Going back to the passing, though, again, if you're Dylan Risk, 199 yards per game through the air is not a lot. And if they can shut down Dylan Risk's arm, you can make this interesting if you're Utah. Now, both these teams, I think, have had disappointing seasons, and most people watching this will probably be able to agree with that. But from a passing standpoint, you've got to get something going if you're UCF, and it's not going to be easy if you're here where they stand in the passing game. So can UCF do it? Can they get something going? Well, we'll see what UCF has in the passing game. Now, before we move on to rushing, I want to have a quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Now, the line on this game is 9.5 points in favor of UCF. Heavy favorites in this one. Will they be able to pull it off? They've been inconsistent. I'm betting on UCF to cover in their last game, but no matter what side of the line you're betting on, do it at FanDuel. Visit our friends at FanDuel, and you're guaranteed $200 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. What do these teams have in the rushing game? Well, obviously, rushing is UCF's forte. That is what they do. How do these teams stack up so far on the year? Let's take a look. I got some graphics for you guys. UCF, 254 yards per game on the ground versus only 134 yards per game on the ground for the Utes. Now, this is advantage UCF big time. And if you're UCF, you know, like I said, this is a little bit of a stingy Utah defense when it comes on the ground, because they're allowing well south of the 254 number that you see here. But can they do it? Can they run against a stingy rush defense for Utah? I think it's going to be interesting to watch to see what UCF has here. This is going to be strength on strength in my book. You want to go out, you want to have a solid rush performance. Again, in RJ Harvey's college finale, you're not making a bowl game. This is his last chance to make a statement. And I think we did an episode earlier this season on, is RJ Harvey a first round back? Well, you don't know. You don't know just yet. A lot of people say no. I don't think he's a first round back, but I think that he's going to be a great addition to some team. Would love to see him on display here at the end. Again, 472 total rushes for UCF versus 371. That's over 100 more total rush attempts. 5.9 yards per carry versus only 4 yards per carry for the Utes. And then you can see the massive difference. They've almost doubled them up in total rush yards on the season at 2,804 yards versus only 1,480 on the ground for the Utes. Again, to me, this is advantage UCF big time here. Now, what are they going to be able to do in this one? One of the things that we like to talk about is what's left to play for at the end of the season when it comes to two teams like this. If you're UCF, what are you playing for? Well, if you're Gus, and if you're Kyle Whittingham, you want to send your players out with a bang. You want these guys to go out and have their last memory of college football to be a win. That's what you're playing for here. Now, when you look at the Big 12 standings, UCF 2-6 in conference, Utah 1-7 in conference. We did a segment earlier this year talking about how laughably bad the media poll was for the Big 12 in terms of how they picked the predicted order of finish for the Big 12, and it was way off. Nobody was close in this thing. Nobody was even in the remote area of close in this thing. So I think this is about establishing your future, especially if you're both teams. Now, we mentioned our players to watch. We mentioned that Isaac Wilson is out. He got gator rolled in the Iowa State game. And if you're Botari, here's your chance, man. Better quarterbacks have won their job because of injury. You hate to see injuries, but you're sort of auditioning here. I want to go back to our Utah players to watch. We got number 10, Luke Botari, who will take over as the starter here. And then, you've got Mike Bernard and Dorian Singer, but I think that a lot of eyes are going to be on Botari to see. Is he your guy? Is he your guy that takes the job and doesn't give it back? Right. Well, he's got a great chance here, I think, to show what he's got as a starting quarterback. And if you're UCF, this is not the game that you want to let him run and throw wild on you. Again, Utah has been poor offensively so far this year. And, there's some other things that I want to note about Utah. Look, their interior O-line, they've been struggling to run the ball there. Right. So you've got to take advantage of that if you're UCF. I made some other notes here, like, look, and talking to our guy, we're going to do a crossover episode later in the week with Locked On Utes, but they feel like the passing game was better with Botari. And if you can't move the ball through the air, I think you're going to have a hard time versus this UCF defense. They're tough. They're tough, and they know how to stop the run. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can get anything going through the air with Botari. And then headed into the spring, do you have a quarterback battle on your hands? We already know what's going on down in Orlando. Again, Dylan Risk came out of nowhere. KJ Jefferson is gone. I think in this last game, the storyline is going to be about, who can establish themselves as the guy headed into spring ball. These are rare opportunities, I think, that you get at the end of the season if you're a quarterback or if you're somebody who hasn't started all year. But there's not a lot of sexiness around this game, guys. There's not a lot of shine around this game. So what do? Well, you go out and you play your best in your last game, because this is audition. This is audition time for a lot of these players. And I think that that's what you take away from this one when these two teams meet. Now, going back to the rushing numbers, when we talk about how good is your run game, anything north, I think, of 5 yards per carry, I mean, you're getting into a first down every 2 times you touch the ball. You're in really good shape if you're UCF averaging 5.9 yards per carry. Now, we know a lot of that is RJ Harvey. Dylan Risk is no statue back there, but there was a string of games where Ja'Cory Brown put up, he had 159 yards rushing, I think, one game where they went absolutely wild on the ground. So he helped these totals quite a bit, combined with RJ Harvey. They put up some dynamic numbers on the ground. Ja'Cory just couldn't get it going with his arm through the air. So you had to pull him, because at the ends of tight games, when you needed somebody to pass the ball, he was nowhere to be found for you. So, what do you do? What do you do if you are UCF in this one? Well, you stick to the ground game and you get out of here with a W, because there's not a lot, I think, that you're going to figure out here in this game about your team that you don't already know. You want to get Dylan Risk a little bit more comfortable in the offense. You want to see what you can figure out with him, because you got to know what you have going into the spring. But you've got to send RJ Harvey out with a bang, I think. And that's pretty much what it comes down to here is, can you send RJ Harvey out with a bang? I'm not so sure what to expect from UCF in this one. It has been a crazy season for them. But as you can tell, the numbers suggest this has been a great year on the ground. RJ Harvey is a generational back. And if you're Utah, this is what you're doing. You're keying in on stopping this guy, because if you can stop him, you can stop UCF. That's what the numbers suggest. Now, Dylan Risk is a threat with his arm, but for the most part, I'm selling out against RJ Harvey and this UCF run game, and I'm making them prove that they can beat me through the air. And guys, that's just the way it's got to be here. So, it'll be interesting to see what these guys can do, but I'm looking forward to seeing what UCF has in their finale. Now, we mentioned that the line on this one is 9.5 points. So what will be the end result of this one? Well, we'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes filtering out the fluff so you can only see the incredible deals that they have on tickets. Very, very easy. Guys, look, this is how it works. Game Time Picks makes curation easy. So whether you're going to see sports or concerts or comedy or theater, you can customize that by genre. They've got all-in pricing, and toggling this feature, shows you all the fees up front. I mean, one thing I hate getting to the end and finding out I've got another $50 I've got to pay for my tickets. You get panoramic seat views, and you have a low price guarantee with Game Time that will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage is your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off for your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. 9.5 is a lot. Guys, 9.5 points is a lot. That's a very large spread on this one. I think UCF covers in this one. Although that Utah defense is tough, and they've been tough all year, I think that offense is in trouble. And Botari, I mean, he's got some potential, but the issues on that interior O-line, I think, are going to be an issue for the Utes versus this UCF D-line that can get after it. Quite honestly, they can get after it, and I'm looking forward to seeing them get after it. I like UCF to cover in this one and go out with a win. They're going to come up a game short of a bowl game, but that's the way the cookie crumbles for the Knights this year. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here. But look, guys, we're going to be back at you guys tomorrow with Locked On Crossover. We'll have Locked On Utes here to talk a little bit about the Utah side of things. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your second listen, go check out our friends over at Locked On Big 12. Our guy Drake Toll leads the conversation in conference realignment news, and he holds no punches when covering every single team in the Big 12. You can get Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can get more Locked On UCF right here on YouTube tomorrow.